Today is, excitingly, the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas, the patron saint of theologians, so we can ask for his prayer for me and for all of the other people who try to teach our faith and try to live it out. And in today's gospel, we get a good early moment in Jesus' ministry where he is trying to figure out and help us figure out how to live out our discipleship, how to live together. And the story at first seems a little bit odd, almost a little bit rude. It says that the mother of Jesus and his brothers arrived at the house where Jesus was and sent word in saying, "Can you come talk to us?" And Jesus responds, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking around at those seated in the circle, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." Seems a little rude. Your family shows up, they just want to talk to you, and you let them stay outside while you continue your ministry. And we have to ask, why is Jesus' family showing up at the door? Probably because they're afraid with this new ministry that he's starting. Maybe he's gone a little nuts, or maybe they're worried about how this is going to reflect back on them, or maybe they're just concerned for his welfare. But whatever is going on, Jesus uses this as a teaching moment for his disciples, perhaps even for himself and perhaps for his family, about what does it mean to have Catholic family values. So one of the parts of our tradition is to deeply value our families, to deeply value the people that we have immediate responsibilities for, to be blessed by their love and to care for them. But those values are not the only important things in our lives. And Jesus is right away in his ministry saying there may be wider things, wider circles of love to which we're called beyond our biological family or our families of origin. Now, notice he's not rejecting his family directly. We know from later in the Gospels that Mary continues to be part of Jesus' life and is there with the disciples on Pentecost. We know that Jesus continues to do his work within a context that includes his family. But he is saying that that family needs to be more. It's not so much that he's getting rid of one family and replacing with another, as much as I think starting with his biological family or his family of origin and expanding it to include others, expanding it to include a wider vision of the reign of God. Now, Thomas Aquinas knew some stuff about struggles with family as well. Thomas Aquinas came from a very wealthy family in a castle, and he had some proclivities towards church life, towards religion, and so he was sent away to the monastery at Monte Cassino, the monastery founded by St. Benedict, with the expectation that he would probably, as a noble person, someone of noble birth who was interested in becoming clergy, or a monk, well, he will probably end up being the abbot, which would have been very good for Thomas's family, to have somebody in the extended family at such a high position in the region. And Thomas says, he comes home one day and says that he's not going to stay in the monastery, he's not going to end up being a powerful abbot, but instead wants to join this new upstart, poor little community called the Dominicans, founded by St. Dominic, that are really new in this period, and their mission is to try to live like the Franciscans, as simply as the apostles lived, to get rid of excess worldly possessions, and to go around preaching the gospel, especially preaching in places where the gospel had been neglected or where other versions of Christian practice that were considered heretical were being practiced. His family did not like this. Instead of being a nice, respected abbot with a big house and a lot of land, he was going to be this poor Dominican wandering around. So they did the reasonable thing and locked him in his room until he said that he wouldn't become a Dominican. He was there for a year. In fact, the legend, the story of St. Thomas is that they're trying to do everything to prevent him from becoming the Dominicans. During the Dominicans, they send in a prostitute into his room to try to seduce him, and supposedly he chases her out of the room with a hot iron. What does all that mean? Well, it means that Thomas saw something important about his potential mission and service of the gospel that was not what his family thought it would be, but he thought that service, that mission, was more important than his biological family's desires. Where does that leave us? Well, where it leaves us in many ways is asking, how do we start with our families? Start with the people, maybe the biological family, maybe the family of choice, spouses, people who are close to us in our immediate circle. How do we start with our love for them and the love we receive from them, but allow that to spill over into everyone who does the will of God as our sibling? How do we have a love for family that is not solely focused on one family, but instead rethinks what family involves? How do we live our lives as part of the family of God, if we are all siblings in Christ and Christ is our brother? How do we live in such a way that our love extends and makes siblings, makes sisters, makes brothers out of all these other people in the world beyond our own biological or most immediate family? That's the challenge that Jesus lays before us. It's hard. And even Thomas Aquinas would say we have definite responsibilities and ethical requirements more for the people that we're most responsible for. But how do we always use that as a base from which to love more rather than as a wall in which to keep our love? That, I think, might be the challenge today as we celebrate the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas.